This book caught my attention at the library. It's called Ordinary Extraordinary, Jane Austen by Deborah Hopkinson. Have you ever heard of the author Jane Austen? She wrote many wonderful stories. This is the story of 6 novels, 3 notebooks, a writing box, and 1 clever girl. I think she's most famous for Pride and Prejudice, which one day you'll read, I hope. It is a truth universally acknowledged that Jane Austen is one of our greatest writers, but it might surprise you to know that Jane lived a simple life. She wasn't rich or even very famous in her time. In fact, if you'd met Jane when she was a girl, you might not have noticed her at all. She was sometimes awkward and a little shy, especially when company arrived. But even then, clever Jane was always watching and listening and smiling to herself at the foolish things people sometimes did and said. Jane had plenty of people to observe right in her own home. Jane and her sister Cassandra were the only girls in a house bursting with 6 boisterous brothers, plus packs of boys who came to live and study at their father's boarding school. It was like growing up inside a story full of fascinating and noisy characters. Families back then made their own fun, and the Austens were never bored. They played word games, cards, and charades. Jane was especially good at shuttlecock and cup and ball. Of course, everybody loved to dance, and in the evenings, the children listened mostly while their father read aloud. Each December, Jane's family turned their old barn into a theater, staging well-known dramas and comedies, Jane's favorites, to entertain their friends and neighbors. Jane loved painting sets, creating costumes, and making stories come to life. Murphy, come over here and listen to the story. There were plenty of stories for her to read too. Her father's great library boasted 500 books, almost all of them by men. Since Jane had little outside schooling, the library was her classroom. And while Jane devoured everything from history to poetry to biographies, she loved novels best of all. Even as a young girl, Jane was a reader who knew exactly what she liked and precisely what she didn't. So it's no surprise that when Jane was 12, she began to scribble her own keen observations and sharp, wry comments into the margins of books. Jane had such fun writing, she began to pen little plays and stories to make her family laugh out loud. And when her older brothers went away to college and the sea, Jane sent witty letters to keep them smiling far from home. Jane's father believed in her talent. He bought her 3 special notebooks and later a fine mahogany writing box so Jane could carry her work wherever she went. While their brothers journeyed far to make their mark in the world, Jane and Cassandra stayed home. Like other young ladies, they played cards and danced, shopped for lace to trim a bonnet, and gossiped about suitors in marriage. Sometimes Jane even fell a little bit in love herself. All the while, Jane kept reading and listening and, of course, practicing her writing. And when she was still just a teen, Jane felt ready to write novels of her own. Now, the most popular novels in Jane's time were adventures and romances with gallant heroes, rescuing fair, fainting heroines from dark, gloomy castles, and, of course, despicable, dangerous villains. But Jane wanted her books to hold up a mirror to the ordinary world so readers could recognize and laugh at themselves. So Jane went her own way, inventing a new kind of story about real people and sisters like Cassandra and herself, who longed to follow their dreams. And that is exactly what she did. By the time she was 21, Jane had written 3 novels. Jane's proud father sent one to a publisher, which alas turned it down. But Jane was a writer who didn't give up. Like an artist using a fine brush, Jane kept working to make her stories better and better until each word was perfect. At long last, another publisher said yes. During her lifetime, 4 of Jane's 6 major novels were published without her real name, which was sometimes the custom then. The title page simply read, "By a Lady." But everyone was curious to know who this talented lady was, and Jane's secret soon leaked out. Jane didn't mind. She rather liked being known as an author, and so although Jane died when she was only 41, she lived long enough to achieve her dream. Now, 200 years later, I wonder if Jane would be surprised to learn that her books are still read and loved by people all over the world. Maybe. Then again, maybe not. For perhaps there was a moment when young Jane stood alone in her father's grand library with the works of great men all around her and said to herself, "I can do this. I can do even better. I will write about the ordinary world in the most extraordinary way." That, dear reader, is exactly what she did. I hope you enjoyed this book. It's different from what I usually read to you, but if you ever thought about writing something, a little story, a children's book, whatever, that it's possible. If you work hard at it and you enjoy it, your dreams can come true just like they did for Jane Austen. Anyway, love you guys.